Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the Mercury retrograde cycle in Aries. I'm going to take you through some important dates in the Mercury retrograde cycle. We are in the middle of it right now. We're going to especially focus on the kazimi of Mercury, which is the union of Mercury in the heart of the sun, a renewal of sorts. We're going to take you through when Mercury will emerge as the morning star and become visible and what that means. And we're going to take the Mercury retrograde through the rising signs for you so that you can understand what kind of new start, what kind of awareness, what kind of new attraction point you might be experiencing with this Mercury retrograde cycle. So, do me a huge favor. If you are joining me here today, please leave me a comment in the chat over here on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're joining me from. It's always nice to see people stopping in from and seeing where they're joining me from. I have a few announcements before we get to all of that. So we are going to take a look right now at the 2024 offerings. Of course, bear with me. I am a professional astrologer. My name is Spencer Michaud. You obviously know that if you're here. But I also do readings. I have a website, spencermichaud.com, where I do mythologically based, tarot based, fixed star based, traditional astrology based readings. I do natal readings, I do transit readings, I do oracle questions. So if you have a specific issue that you want to work through, you can find all of those different offerings at spencermichaud.com at the Book Now button. So check that out. Would love to work with all of you. Really enjoyed connecting with some of the folks in the community that show up in our live streams, and I'm excited to work with you in the future. I am having an Aries season sale. I will show you the decans today, part of my decans webinar, which is basically a 10-degree section of the zodiac where we have specific themes that we might not normally see in popularized versions of astrological analysis. There is tarot, there is mythology, there's fixed stars. These are 2.5 to 3 hour webinars that you can learn a lot about astrology in. And the Decans of Aries is 20% off right now. If you go to spencermichaud.com, you can click on the store button and you can find all 12 of those webinars, including Aries, as well as some other webinars that I gave talking about the connection with tarot and astrology. I also have a beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, who is a magical practitioner. So if there's some challenging things that are coming up in your chart and you need an extra boost through the magic of planetary remediation, go check out Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. Tanya does great work. She has some really awesome offerings up right now. She has 5 new Mars in Exalted Capricorn oils, including one called Iron Teeth, which I think is a pretty cool name, which has the spirit of the beaver infused within it. You can see that there are actual wood chips from a beaver that recently returned to our area in Michigan in the kind of the Huron Valley watershed here. They hadn't had beavers in this area for 150 years. And now we're seeing evidence of these new beavers. I've got these wood chips here in my in my office that I keep to remind me to keep working hard. But it's really great stuff. You could check her out on Etsy. She does great work, and please go support her. And then finally, if you are enjoying the work that I'm doing here today, you can support the channel by either purchasing a super chat with the little $ in the chat today, or going to buymeacoffee.com and supporting me there. This is work that is a labor of love. I put a lot of work into bringing you this information through research, through getting all of the production values ready to go each week so it looks nice. There's equipment involved, all of those things, and this is the best way to support the channel and to keep me going. So appreciate all of you who are generous each week, and thank you so much. This is where you can find those things. All right, friends, those are our announcements. Let's welcome in a few friends here. What do you say? Andy H is here from England. What's up, Andy? Nice to see you, my friend Andrew. How you doing? I'm always glad to see you popping in. Glad that some of my shyer friends here are making their presence known. It's beautiful to see you participating, and hope that everything's going well your way and that luck is finding you, my friend. Candy Corn is here. Hi from Connecticut. What's up, Candy Corn? Nice to see you. Thank you for your generosity last week as well. Appreciate you and great to see you here again. Rachel Fletcher is here from Roanoke, Virginia with a little owl heart. Thank you, Rachel. Always appreciate your presence here and again, your generosity. So really enjoy the regulars that we have here and being able to share this wisdom with you today. Dawn Fisher says, hi, everyone from Mobile, Alabama, enjoying a beautiful spring day. Ooh, Dawn, you have to let us know how it's going down there in Alabama. We've got snow here in Michigan, so it's technically spring, but this Midwest weather, you kind of never know. But it's nice to see you here, Dawn, and looking forward to sharing with you today. Paintings by Myrrh is here. Ooh, that's a new name. Hey, Mare. Mare, is that how I say that? Hi from York Beach, Maine. Ooh, I love your avatar there and your cool, what is this? This beautiful ice blue hair. That's nice. So welcome, friend, and really glad that you're here with us today. And I love the little lobster emoji. All right, Don says it's 45 this morning, but 75 this afternoon. Oh my goodness. Well, that sounds like a beautiful afternoon, Don. Okay, friends, we're going to try to be efficient and succinct today. Some of you have reached out with some feedback recently about the channel, which I appreciate, and I'm always kind of taking notes and seeing how I can be of better service for you. And I'm noticing that, of course you all know that I'm a little bit long-winded and that I like to go long, but there is limitations to all of our attention spans, to all of our energies. And since the time change has happened, when we go super late, it's getting into my dinner time. So my energy might be fading around the end. So I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more succinct today. I always love conversing with you. So if you have a question or a poignant comment, drop it in the chat. But I'm going to kind of dive right into it here today. Just want to welcome a couple friends first, though. Jennifer's here. Says, hi from Ann Arbor, Michigan, working, but I'm listening. Good to see you, Jennifer. Devin Malone, my friend Devin is here. What's up? Good morning and afternoon, Devin says. Nice to see you here, friend, as well. Okay, so my friends, we are taking a look at Mercury Retrograde. So this is a cycle where the planet of Hermes is going to be cycling backwards. And I'm going to bring this up to the stage here. And this is a chart of the original point when Mercury stationed retrograde. So we have a number of different checkpoints in the Mercury retrograde cycle. A lot of times we get a lot of, popular astrology is pretty hip to Mercury retrograde. This is one of the things that people are like, oh, technology is going to start breaking down. Communications are going to start going haywire. And some of that is true. And I think that anytime any planet stations retrograde, sometimes its ability to carry out its preferred significations slows down. Mistakes have to be rectified. There is a review process. We can think about the journey of Hermes symbolically when in its retrograde cycle and when it goes under the beams. I'll talk about that in a second. But you can think about Hermes, who was also called a psychopomp, and that's a fancy word for a guide of souls to the underworld, guide of the dead. In this particular phase that we are going through right now, where Mercury is retrograde and under the beams, it's sort of like Hermes venturing into the underworld. Mercury is a planet that has a lot of movement associated with it. It's a speedy planet. Hermes in traditional Greek mythology was a god that could be an intermediary between worlds. So we may be asking a lot of questions and between different factions and between different worlds. One of my favorite traditional astrologers, Robert Schmidt, has some ways of thinking about this from a Hellenistic perspective. He describes Mercury's desires or planetary goals as destabilizing, something that asks questions or casts something into doubt. I think that's really important because a lot of times whenever Mercury is moving through a section of our charts, we have to ask questions. It's the opposite of Jupiter, where sometimes we feel like we have certainty. We have faith in something. We take things without asking questions. Well, when Hermes is moving through a certain area of the chart, we say, well, let's reconsider this. Maybe there's multiple options. Maybe there is a new way of looking at something. Maybe there is a new way to communicate. And in this particular place, when Mercury or Hermes is entering the underworld, we may be going into an internal place that maybe into our memories, maybe into our histories, maybe into our past to recover something that will help us to communicate potentially. I got a really nice text message from my stepdad the other day, and he was wanting to send me some pictures he found in his basement, like in the underworld, of my mother, who coming up on Tuesday, it will be 2 years since she passed. But that's a recovery of some beautiful memories. And it was very Mercury retrograde. It felt very appropriate for the cycle. So recovery of something that might help us to understand ourselves a little bit better, to be able to communicate who and what we are, especially as it's moving through Aries. We will break down some of the decans of Aries here as we go along. But this particular decan of Aries, Aries 3, we are going to be kind of working with a decan that is ruled by Venus. So think about Venus in her exile in Aries, which she just recently moved into today, I think. Today, last night, wherever you're at. And she is trying to bring about harmony, but with resources that aren't as familiar to her as she normally would be expecting. So a lot of the themes with this decan, which has a spirit associated with it called Eros, is really about being able to win over either a hostile crowd, win over someone who disagrees with you, to be able to use charm and charisma to convince people towards your point of view. So when we have Mercury moving through that decan, we may be asking questions about how we do that. How do we encourage people to follow our lead? How do we express ourselves in a way that is authentic to ourselves, but also socially graceful? A lot of the times, the beginning decans of Aries, we talk about like a bludgeon or an axe or a hammer that can do collateral damage, where we say, this is who we are, and we don't care what anyone else thinks, and we don't care if you like me or whatever, all of those kind of things. Once we get to this third decan of Aries, we say, hey, you know what? I've established who I am, but if I want other people to get on board with my vision and on my journey, you're going to have to lean into some of the niceties that may be a little bit unfamiliar in the earlier parts of the sign. One of the things I had written down in my notes for my Decans of Aries webinar, which I put on a number of months ago now, but one of the best metaphors for this decan is an oasis, and an oasis on a long journey. We just had the renewal of the sun at the spring equinox, the beginning of a new solar journey. And you can think about this particular area of the zodiac as a temporary resting place where you're meeting up with friends, you're trying to, get people on board with your vision. And I love the metaphor of Rivendell for this decan, where we have a party, a fellowship that's coming together. They might not all agree with each other. If you remember in the Lord of the Rings, there's arguments about who should carry the ring, who should be the leader, who should be even part of the party. And eventually they have to make an agreement to keep going on this journey. And they have this temporary resting place that's very, very beautiful, but it's not a permanent place. They know that they have a long journey ahead. So that's another theme that we're working through with this particular area of Aries. So you may be asking questions right now about, who do I need to get on my team? How do I communicate my vision to other people so that I can be successful on the long journey ahead? That this isn't an end point, this is a beginning. And oftentimes we have to reevaluate our methods, our communication styles, our entire vision sometimes, to be able to figure out if what we are doing is effective. This is something that I've been talking about a lot on my channels. Like I've done a lot of revision of the content of the channel or the aesthetics of the channel. And I've been talking a lot about, okay, now I have to consider how to best support the channel. What of my content should stay? What should go? How do I keep changing so that I can continue to be successful? Because I'm of the firm belief that to be successful, we do need to change when it becomes appropriate. So that's really the vibe that I'm feeling with this Mercury retrograde cycle. We, of course, are going to be coming up as I'm recording this, in 2 days on a new moon solar eclipse in Aries 2. A really, really important eclipse, a very powerful one at the sun's degree of exaltation. So we are getting ready for a very important new start. And Mercury is going to help us to sell that vision, whatever it is. You may not completely know what the vision is yet. Those things may be revealed over time. Eclipses sometimes they don't always reveal everything right away. Sometimes it unfolds over many months. But this is a great time to review the way that you communicate your personal vision to others. And are you attracting them? Okay, the gold-tipped arrows of Eros that attract. Or are you repelling people through the way that you communicate, through the way that you share your vision, etc.? All of us sometimes have blind spots as far as like the way that we communicate or the way that we share our vision that may actually be counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve. And this is a great time to reevaluate some of those things. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a first insight. And I'm going to check in with the chat here. Paintings by Mayor says, Mercury is traveling over my 19-degree Chiron. My Chiron, 19 degrees Aries, and Moon, 17 degrees Aries, 5th house. I'm revisiting a lot of my old paintings and breathing new life into them during this cycle. Perfect. Perfect example, Mayor. Being able to take the topic of the 5th house, reviewing a creative process, seeing which things need to be reborn for the long journey ahead for your creative process. So very great example. I love it. Devin says, I love this deck, and it reminds me that the dandelion has bloomed and is offering its pollen to attract the bees for pollination. Ooh, I like that. I like that. And that really fits really well, Devin, with something we've been talking about in the last few weeks about Aries in general, about how it isn't necessarily an island. It is one stage of a much longer phase, of a cyclical phase. And it is a yang energy where the seed is bursting through the ground and then starting to spread its leaves. But eventually that transitions into a different part of the cycle where we are communing with others. It's not necessarily about being an island. It is about communication. It is about interaction with others. So I think that this is something to integrate in, and I love that you're bringing that up and highlighting that. Okay, so let's look at a couple different points in the Mercury retrograde cycle. So the first part of the cycle was Mercury's actual station retrograde. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. That's on April the 1st. We've already gone through that. And one of the other things that happened on that particular day is that Mercury moved under the sun's beams at 27 degrees of Aries. Now that is basically when the planet, in this case Mercury, is within 15 degrees of the sun and then getting closer to the sun. So it literally will disappear. We cannot see it in the evening or the morning. Okay. Right now, Mercury was the evening star. Before it went under the beams, it was able to be seen at sunset on the western horizon in the northern hemisphere. When it's going under the beams, we can no longer see Mercury when the sun goes down because it is hidden by the light that the sun casts in that 15-degree orb that was standardized in Hellenistic astrology. Other people will disagree and say that there's a slightly different orb, but this is the one that I use in my practice. We will also be getting to a point where we have Mercury coming together with the sun. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So in addition to that part of the cycle, we're also going to see we're going to be seeing Mars and Saturn coming together. So here is the point. We've got the first part of the kazimi in the inside, the first part of the retrograde in the inside, and we have the kazimi on the outside on April 11th of 2024. Okay, and we are also wanting to understand that Mars and Saturn are coming together and then starting to separate shortly before that kazimi. So what is a kazimi? All right, so there's Mars conjunct Saturn. That's important because Mars and Saturn, Mars in particular, is the host of Mercury right now. Mercury is traveling through Mars's country, Mars's temple, Mars's home, and Mars is trying to provide resources, topics, themes for Mercury to work with. Now, Mercury isn't as able to communicate with Mars as it would normally be if there was a traditional aspect between the two planets. Right now it's in what's called a blind spot or an aversion. Now we do have a very a technical term that is called contra-antitia, where there is a secret line of communication between those two planets. And I broke that down in a previous live stream, and my good buddy Devin could probably answer some of those questions for you if you have more of them today. But the basic gist of that is that there is equal light on both sides of the solstice and the equinox, and we're dealing with signs that are sort of mirroring each other and have a secret line of communication. And in this case, contra-antitia is like a secret, kind of like a secret opposition, or I've seen it described as a reluctant conjunction. So there is a line of communication between these two planets. Generally, astrologers will look for those two planets adding up to 30 degrees. So that's another factor. We might not have as powerful of an antitia or a contra-antitia if those degrees don't add up to 30 degrees. So keep that in mind as well. The long and the short of it is basically there is some difficulty in getting those resources. It's not a happy conversation, if it's a conversation at all. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Let's see. So that's our host Mars, and I wanted to highlight that because Mars and Saturn are coming together shortly before this kazimi, and I'll get to the kazimi in a second. But Mars and Saturn coming together in the second 10-degree section of Pisces, we are dealing with the two malefics coming together in a similar space. I've often thought of this as 1 foot on the gas, Mars, 1 foot on the brake, Saturn. And there's some frustration associated with it. So we may look to the Pisces area of our chart to be able to ascertain where we might be experiencing some frustration, where we want to move forward in a situation, but we're being blocked or we're having to slow down. Oftentimes, these two malefics in this decan can speak to the challenges that come from overconfidence. There is a story in this decan of a number of apprentices or youths that overestimated their abilities. We're talking about Dolos, the apprentice to Prometheus. We're talking about Phaethon, the son of Helios, who was the sun god, who tried to drive the chariot of the sun across the sky and eventually was shot out of the sky by Zeus because he was screwing everything up. He was lighting things on fire. He was casting things into frozen hell and darkness. It was madness. So we may be seeing some of the consequences of overconfidence. We may be seeing the death of a dream potentially. I think that decan is also, since it is Jupiter ruled, it is generally a bridge between our dreams and our lived reality, our physical reality. When we have Mars and Saturn here, we may be, with Mars, very much wanting to do whatever it takes to achieve that dream or pursue it, hotly in pursuit of that dream. We may even feel there's another signification of Mars where it severs and separates us from things, so we may feel severed from a dream. Saturn sometimes can say you have to work very hard to connect those two worlds. Or conversely, Saturn can also say, you're not going to be able to. Here's a big wall in between your dream and your lived reality. So I do think it is important to acknowledge during this Mercury retrograde cycle what planet is trying to provide for that. So a lot of the motivation behind communicating our in a way that will attract people to our vision is because we have a dream that's important to us. And we may have to change the way that we communicate because we may have experienced a setback on some level. Oftentimes, we have to change how we do things when we run up into obstacles. So there could be things like that going on where you're running face long into the wall of Saturn and you're like, man, this just isn't working. I need to do something completely different. And it probably hasn't been working for a long time. And this may bring up some of that frustration and that frustrating energy. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to check in with chat here. Painted Turtle is here. Says, hi, Spencer. Hi, all. Hope everyone's doing well. Nice to see you, Painted Turtle. Hope you're doing well, friend. Stephen the Jupiterian is here. Says, hello. Happy Friday, Venus Day. Venus and Aries. Yes, we have a new house and host for Venus. Mars is going to be the host for Venus now, so it's interesting, huh? Paintings by Mare says, you're pronouncing Mare right. It's short for Meredith. Yeah, it was... I know that your picture sort of looks like a mermaid, but Mare, it seemed to make sense. So I'm glad I'm getting it right. Okay, so friends, let's take a look at this kazimi. So this is another important part of the cycle. Mercury will station retrograde. Usually around that time, it's going under the beams of the sun, and it will travel. It will traverse that 15 degrees of separation. While the sun moves towards it, Mercury will move towards the sun. So they're moving towards each other. And finally, they will meet at 22 degrees of Aries on April 11th. Okay? So the Mars-Saturn conjunction is on April 10th, 2 days after the eclipse, which is April 8th. And then the kazimi of Mercury is on April the 11th. So I feel like these moments are big spotlights on information that we need, on realizations that we may have. And in this case, since Hermes is in that psychopomp mode, we may have some important realizations from our past, some important realizations from our internal state about who we are and why we do what we do and how we can communicate who we are to others. So what we're going to do when we take this through the rising signs, we're going to take a look and say, where might you have a realization? What topic might you have something revealed? The other thing that we're going to do when we talk about the kazimi, now kazimi is a fancy word for in the heart of the sun. All right. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to connect that information to both the Gemini house and the Virgo house. Those are the two houses or topics that Mercury is going to be trying to provide resources for. So we may have realizations through a certain topic in our life that will then spread information like underground mycelium to those other topics. Our lives are interconnected. One event can affect other parts of our life. That's just how reality works. And we really do see this when we study traditional astrology, is that many parts of our life are related. And when we try to over-isolate singular transits, singular parts of the chart, we're making a mistake because we are doing something called deracinating the chart. That's a fancy word that I learned from Sophie Strand in The Flowering Wand, which is a really great book that I highly, highly recommend. Okay. Hopefully we're still going here. I saw something blip on the screen. We good? Okay, I hope we're good here. Uranus Ascending is stopping in. How you doing, Uranus Ascending? Nice to see you, friend. Appreciate you. Okay, let's see. So, let's go back to the kazimi. Now, another thing to consider about the kazimi is that the way that the Renaissance astrologers would talk about Mercury going under the beams of the sun is like someone taking to their sickbed, like an old planet that is like, I'm elderly, I'm sick, and I need to be reborn. I need all of the old parts of the cycle burned away so that I can burn away all the things that are weighing me down, all the things that are feeling heavy, so that I can get some new vitality infused and a new sense of purpose infused into that stellar body. So we might be feeling renewed. We might have a renewed sense of purpose. We might have some really important insights about how we share our vision and how we get others on board around April the 11th. Also keep in mind Chiron is part of this story too. It's hanging out at 19 degrees of Aries, very close to where the eclipse was. So there might be some painful realizations. There might be some wounds that become opened or need to be healed. There might be some insights about how we teach and share information, because Chiron was a centaur that liked to teach others and share his wisdom with others, in addition to being having a wound that could not heal. So those are other things to consider. One other part to consider with this is that Venus is traveling in the same space. So we may be trying to create harmony, but we may be aggressive about it because Venus is utilizing the territory of Mars to try to get what she wants, rather than, and maybe doing it from a very subjective perspective. The North Node is also present with this, or co-present with this cycle. And the North Node increases that which it touches. You know, in traditional astrology, it was either considered a hungry demon that could never be satisfied, or a point of, or simply a point of increase. That's not always a good thing, okay? If we are trying to express ourselves by any means necessary, or if we're trying to get what we want without considering anyone else's perspective, that can lead to conflict. That can lead to challenges. So these are some things to consider along the way. All right, so let's keep going in the cycle here. The next part of the cycle is when Mercury emerges from the beams of the sun. So here is April the 21st, where Mercury is going to be at about 16 degrees of Aries. And you can see here that the sun's at about 1 to 2 degrees of Taurus. And that is when they finally get that arc of separation of 15 degrees, where Mercury is now going to be visible as the morning star. Now, I've showed this in the past, and I'm not sure I want to move the chart yet, but if we were to move this chart all the way over to the eastern horizon, you would see that the sun would be rising through primary motion. Primary motion is the clockwise motion of the planets as they rise and set over the horizon. You would see that Mercury would rise before the sun and would be visible in the morning hours at dawn when the sun is still below the horizon. So that's an important moment for any planet after they've been renewed. Think about it as someone who has convalesced, who's been renewed in the heart of the sun, and he's starting to feel better. He isn't quite direct yet, but he's starting to feel better, and there is visible results potentially of the realizations that we had when we were either going into the underworld or going into our past, reviewing how we communicated with others. If you will notice, Mercury will be in a different decan of Aries when it emerges as the morning star. It will be going back to the place where it began its retrograde. So this is interesting because we are on that back to the place. It's back to the place where it's about to station direct and when it was in the shadow. Sorry, excuse me, I misspoke there. But it is in a different decan. It's in the decan of the eclipse. It is in a place that is more related not to getting people on board with your vision, but with stating what that vision is, who you are, and what your authentic self is. So to me, this is part of this process. Mercury will station retrograde in the place where we are trying to gather support. It will review the way that we have been communicating in the past, the way that we've been either attracting or repelling, and it will station direct in the area that will say, oh, okay, I've also need to review what my actual vision and authentic self is before I can actually try to sell that idea to somebody. See how I'm connecting the dots here? Before we can be enthusiastic and sell our own, get people on board with our journey, we have to understand what our values are, what our ethics are, what we are trying to achieve. It's very hard to get people on board with something if you yourself don't believe it. This is something that I learned as a professional musician, is if you aren't feeling the music that you are playing, your audience is not going to feel it either. So the way that you can authentically express is by really believing in what you're playing, really being able to be that performer through connecting with that feeling within yourself. So part of my advice for this cycle is examine how you've been communicating with others. Is it attracting them? Is it repelling? How can you gather support for the long journey ahead? And then finally, how can you express your unique vision? And what is that vision? You may have to review some parts of it so that when we start seeing Mercury moving forward again, you might be having the ability to sell those ideas better because you are clearer about who and what you are, what your ethics are, what you are or are not willing to do. Okay, this is important. And you may have a clearer vision for how you want to lead into the future. Now, if you also notice, April 20th, April 21st is pretty much the exact conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus. So these aren't coincidences. We often will have multiple testimonies like this where we have Mercury emerging from the beams, an important conjunction like in the sky with the modern planet of Uranus. This is where we might see an overlap between traditional and modern astrology. Traditional astrologers will be like, oh yeah, that's the day Mercury is emerging from the beams. Modern astrologers who incorporate those techniques will be like, oh yeah, that's the time that Jupiter is conjoining Uranus. So we can expect to see messages regarding both of those themes potentially. Now, we've talked about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in past live streams, but just long story short, Jupiter and Uranus coming together is in the third decan of Taurus, is very much about remedying a past mistake, finding liberation through patience, finding liberation through examining our past behaviors and trying to fix it through repentance. Okay, there's a daimon or spirit in that decan called the Litai, who are old women that followed behind 8, who is which translates to rashness. So think about things we may have done in the past just through either ignorance or rashness, and then how do we, move forward? How do we say, oh, well, we made a mistake. We've got to fix that. Okay, so keep that in mind as you're moving forward through these cycles. And then finally, Mercury is going to station direct on April the 25th. So here we're moving from April 21st to the 25th, and there we see Mercury stationing direct at 15 degrees of Aries, conjoining the North Node. Okay, so really powerful time for Mercury in that second decan of Aries, a solar decan. Okay, where we're trying to shine our light. We are supercharging Mercury at this point. We are increasing our ability to make a royal decree of some sort, to be able to express ourselves in an idiosyncratic way. And we have a strong desire to do so. Maybe much stronger than we normally would if we didn't have Mercury conjoining the North Node. So that is the entire Mercury retrograde cycle. It's not just one moment. It's a series of moments. And each of them are their own omens that are going to be speaking. In traditional astrology, they would call those moments of phasis. This is another Robert Schmidt teaching, is they are omens that speak. So the retrograde cycle, the time when it goes under the beams, the kazimi, the station direct, all of those are going to be moments of phasis. So you can track a narrative through these different cycles. So I will be curious to hear about your stories at each of these moments. I want you to try to attempt to connect the dots between each of these dates that I've outlined here today. And I most of all want you to try to connect the Aries topics of your life in this random Virgo rising chart. This is an 8th house kazimi, and it's connected to the 10th house Gemini, which is how we show up publicly. Could be career, but it could be what we're known for publicly. And with the 1st house, which is related to the body and the character. So something where you share resources with other people. And I'll do this for all the rising signs. This is just an example. I want to teach you how to break this down yourself. When you have something going on with either debt, shared resources, legacies, wills, inheritances, though that moment of realization, that review of that process could lead to some valuable insights in your career or how you show up publicly, or even potentially with insight into your mother, which is sometimes a 10th house signification. And it might change your entire character with providing resources for the 1st house. There could be something to do with your body. It could be something to do with how you see yourself or how you view yourself. So those are the ways that we would try to connect those dots. At seeing the symmetry or the synergy, I guess, would be what I was trying to get towards between these planets and the rest of the chart. Okay, check back in with our chat here. Painted Turtle says, I feel like when Saturn is trying to boss me, it works out when I go ahead and let Saturn know I will actually take the most responsibility. I find if I'm ahead with a plan, things work out in my favor. Yeah, Saturn definitely appreciates patience, planning, slowing down, acting in a mature fashion. Painted Turtle also says, Mars trying my Saturn by house natally has really taught me I need action points for that dude and let him know that I got this. So transit Saturn and Mars aspecting, even in conjunction, has become less scary. I like that perspective. Yeah, I don't think that there's really any of these aspects that we really should fear necessarily. I think healthy respect for them is important. I think that we never want to take important Mars or Saturn transits for granted. But I do think like sometimes when we have a important or what could be considered a dangerous Mars aspect, not necessarily Mars Saturn, although that can manifest like that, we should slow down, right? We respect Mars by saying, well, I'm going to have to think this through. I'm going to have to learn how to manage my stress, manage my anger. I'm going to have to slow down. When we have important Saturn transits that could be difficult, we probably also need to do the same thing. We might have to do something that's difficult that we don't want to do, but that we have to do. And we can respect the transit by doing so. Dawn says, Anne Ortley summed it up one time by do your Saturn and you will find happiness. To me, it's more like find peace. Yeah, I think that, again, these planets give us a blueprint as to what might be required of us. Now, it's not going to be just one-to-one for every single person. There's lots of different ways that a planet can bring us different events with similar archetypes. And there's an interaction with your own planets. There's interaction with other planets in your chart. Every one of those situations is going to be unique. But yes, like when we are given, I hesitate to use the word divine assignment, but that is sort of what I would say it's like. But at the end of the day, there is such a thing as free will. There is such a thing as pronoia. I've talked a lot about this when I'm teaching the 3 different types of fate. And without going too far into it, there are 3 types according to Greek philosophers. There's hemarmene, the fate that we're born with that is fairly unchangeable. Like our parents. We didn't choose our parents. Some people believe that we do, but you can't really be blamed for who your parents are, right? There's Ananke, which is the fate that we create by being compelled by these planets without any knowledge of them, through our ignorance. A lot of us created our fate through Ananke before we came to astrology, where we were just acting out the archetypal play, okay, of our transits, of our chart, etc. And finally, you have the type of fate called pronoia, which is the type of fate that you will create through providence or grace or through foresight. So oftentimes what we are trying to do here is create fate via pronoia by understanding what influences want to work through us or what influences are trying to work through us. We can choose to succumb to them. Sometimes it's good to surrender to that flow. We can also sometimes choose to say, no, I know I'm being influenced to this in this direction, but I'm going to use my past experience and my character to make a different choice. So we may be encouraged during this Mercury retrograde cycle to discover what our personal visions are and how to share them with others the most effectively. We may also be encouraged to move under our own power, whether through circumstance or through choice. Sometimes we may be feeling like we have to move under our own power to the extreme when it's conjoining the North Node. We may be encouraged through our Ananke, if we didn't know any better, to burn our bridges. Literally, like we have bridges in the news. Sorry if it's too soon, but like, and we can maybe make a choice to not burn those bridges and to say, well, let's see if we can find a way to express ourselves without destroying every relationship that we have, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Dimphy says, my natal moon, 14 degrees Pisces. Oh boy, Dimphy. Gonna have a Mars-Saturn conjunction on your natal moon. That'll be fun. You'll have to keep us in the loop how that's going. Steven says, in my chart, I need to do my Saturn in Taurus in the 6th. It's opposite my chart ruling planet, Jupiter, in the 12th. I feel like I was forced to do it to stay on this earth. Yeah, so this is another thing where you might be influenced by Saturn in the 6th in Taurus. Maybe having to take care of your body in a way that you might not want to, or you might not feel that, or you might have work that you might not want to do. It might be related to patience. There might be some patience that you need with certain situations in your life, Stephen, with Sagittarius rising. A lot of times Sagittarius rising is impatient. So there might be lessons through that. But there's also, things where we'll be able to make choices through that. I do believe in choices. Painted Turtle says, I think now I understand from these 3 types of fate why your motto is make fate your friend. Yeah, that is, and it is. Because the way that I view reality and astrology and fate versus free will, it's actually both. I would say it's very hard to differentiate whether something was fated or whether we chose it or whether we are fated to make the choice. See what I'm saying? But at the same time, when you surrender to the things that are out of your control, you are making friends. When you choose not to succumb to the planetary influences that would create more problems and difficulties for you, you are making friends with that planet. I think it's both. There are times when we surrender to the influence and say, well, this is really what would bring us the most success. These are the types of things that will be successful right now. If you are going into this Mercury retrograde and this eclipse, and you are hell-bent on finding the most fair, the most equal, I need other people's input and permission for this particular thing, you wouldn't be in alignment with the tenor of the time. You'd be fighting upstream. That doesn't mean that there can't be agreements. It just means that they will be more difficult to carry out in this astrological weather. If you are going into something to be able to express yourself and to be able to say, I'm going to make a new start, I'm going to do it, I'm going to move under my own power more than I have in the past. I'm going to try to do that in a way that's graceful and that will be attractive to other people, so they will want to follow my vision. Then you'll be in alignment with that. So a lot of different ways to look at it, right? Dimfy says, oh, you got Mercury at the opposite of the moon and opposite the Saturn-Mars conjunction. That sucks. That's going to be a bummer. Steven says there was an earthquake in New York today. My mom woke me up. I have the patience of Job at times. Yes. Yeah. Sending all our love to those in New York. I don't know how serious that was. I've just gotten whispers of that. So hopefully everyone's okay. But eclipse season, it literally shakes things up. All right, friends. So let's do another thing here. Let's take this opportunity to bring to the stage the decans of Aries 2. So here is Aries 2. And this is where, Aries 3. This is Aries 3. And we can take a look at Aries 2 as well. But let's focus on Aries 3, where the retrograde began. So this is a decan that's consecrated or syncretized with the Four of Wands. And I'm going to stand up and stretch out a little bit here. Please feel free to do the same if you're listening. We always have to pay attention to our bodies. We don't want to sit for too long. We want to make sure that we're moving around and practicing healthy habits so our brains continue to work well. But themes of Aries 3: setting hearts aflame, gathering a following, sex appeal, seduction, and erotic desire, temporary refuges and fleeting passions. Remember, we talked about Rivendell as a temporary oasis on a much longer journey. Hesed and Atziluth, which is related to the Kabbalistic tree of life, the flow of inspiration. Hesed is a Jupiter Sephira in the Kabbalistic tree of life, so we have an excess of passion maybe in this decan. Charisma, glamour magic, dramatic abilities, winning over a hostile crowd. This is the decan of motivational speeches, of like halftime speeches, like a football game or something where you're down by 10 points and you've got the coach, Newt Rockney, if you're a Notre Dame fan or whatever, sitting up there and trying to rally the troops towards victory. And they may be a little bit down on their luck. This is Mel Gibson and Braveheart, like trying to get his people all worked up to be able to go fight. It's trying to get people on board with a vision in difficult circumstances, right? So questions you can ask yourself about this Mercury retrograde cycle. How can you tap into your personal magnetism to motivate or attract? How can you use diplomacy and tact to get what you want? How can you create, or how can you celebrate who you've become? This is another theme of this decan, celebrations. Here you see I believe it's called a huppah, which is a part of a Jewish wedding ceremony, it's symbolizing the new home that's being created in a wedding. So it's a party on some level as well. This could be a celebration of the self. What methods might inspire people to see things your way? Is this relationship permanent or a torrid affair? So if you have passions that are arising, make sure that they're sustainable. And then finally, how can you gather strength for the long road ahead? Staying power isn't necessarily one of the themes that Aries is known for. They are very much known for the burst of energy that begins something. So that's why we don't want to get stuck in the Aries area of our life, but we can utilize it to make a new start. So that's Aries 3 that we're dealing with here. If we just go back in time here to Aries 2, you can see here we have the themes of royalty, when we're going to be having the forward motion. So royalty, personal sovereignty, establishing character, virtues and decrees, benevolent rulership. So how can you lead in a way that is kind? All right. Maybe one of the parts of this Mercury retrograde, maybe questioning, casting doubt on our leadership ability, and say, well, is the way that we're leading too autocratic? Do we need to lead in service of the people that we're trying to lead rather than in service of the self? So those are some questions that we might come across as well. Okay. Mare says, with Saturn and Pisces, I started a dream journal. It's been very helpful and healing. Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been having a lot of dreams lately. I had a dream about like a limousine like a white limousine last night. I don't know. I'm not going to try to analyze that at this moment, but there's some other part I couldn't remember. But yeah, vivid dreams for sure with Saturn and Pisces. Revis is here. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. It says, "Hi, Spencer. I've been listening to your podcast for over a year, but was never able to make it live before. So happy to be here today, and thank you for creating this wonderful space. Love, Ravana. Oh, nice to see you here, Ravana. And welcome, friend. I'm so glad that you were able to make a live stream. I love when we have new participants in the chat. It is such an honor to be interpreting the stars for you today. And thank you for letting me know that you're here. It really does. It really fills me up to see that there's new people and that I'm not just howling into the void. So appreciate you and welcome. Okay, let's see. So that's the decans of Aries. If I was just to briefly bring to the stage the decans of Pisces, which you can also find at spencermichaud.com. I'm showing you the decan Pisces 2, where Mars is going to be trying to provide resources to this Mercury cycle. And it's coming together with Saturn. So here we see the 9 of Cups. So themes of harmonizing inner and outer reality, the power of intention / wishful thinking. This is sort of the Make-A-Wish card. But with both malefics there, getting that wish granted, we may have to overcome some extra obstacles. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means that it's going to be some tough sledding ahead. Yesod and Bria, which is shaping reality before manifestation. Yesod is related to the moon. It's sort of the birth canal in the Kabbalistic tree of life. So sometimes we have to be able to visualize it before we can bring it into reality. Dissolving boundaries between worlds and dimensions. Mars may sever a boundary between dimensions. Saturn may try to construct a wall between those boundaries. This decan is also related with flowing with the Tao, Indra's net of interconnectedness. But also because of our stories that we taught about Sorcerer's Apprentice energy, naive optimism and overestimating abilities. So here's how we can connect these two things. You might be having to ask questions and review the way that you are communicating and trying to get people on board with your vision because of overestimating your abilities in the past. Maybe you were trying to do something that you weren't ready for yet. And you're having to go back and review some skills. You're having to reevaluate the scope of your vision. This is something that's really, I think, important with dreams. Oftentimes, dreams can be limitless, but reality has limitations. I know that some of you New Agers won't agree with me on that, but you're wrong. So I'll just say that there are limitations that we work within. You know, we all are allotted a certain amount of time. We all have to work with time and cycles. And I think that, yes, we can bend those slightly with our intentions, sometimes with magic, but there are some hard truths that we have to accept in physical reality. And when we have a dream, oftentimes the scope of that dream is enormous, and we try to manifest too much of it. And when we have this review process, and when we have both of these malefics in the dream, maybe it's not that the dream is completely dead. It's maybe that the dream needs to be scaled differently to be able to meet the realities that we have in our life. If you're trying to harmonize the dream with your reality, there sometimes needs to be compromise. Does that make sense? There may be situations in your life that just don't support that dream, and you have to compromise between those two things and shift the dream a little bit. Like I thought about this when I became a father. I was a very young dad, and I wanted to be a professional musician, and my dreams, they were big. I just didn't want to just be a musician. I was like, I'm going to be a mix of the Beatles and Jeff Buckley. In my brain, that was the standard. And it wasn't necessarily that I had to be that like famous or anything like that. Those were the standard setters for me as far as the quality of their work. And we can agree or disagree about that. But for me, those were the torch standard bearers at the time. And there was a perfectionism around that was very difficult. And harmonizing being a new dad and being a professional musician was hard in the beginning. And my vision of that had to change. I had to maybe be more content with some more local performances rather than touring around the world. You know, there were differences where I had to say no to certain offers because I was living in service of another human being instead of just in service of that dream. So those are the types of limitations that I'm talking about, how we would harmonize that, sometimes due to things that would cause us pain. Now, my life became a lot better and easier when I accepted the fact that there was a harmony between those two things, or needed to be, rather than just constantly fighting it and swimming downstream or whatnot. I remember specifically, I had a conversation with my dear now past mother, where she was sitting. She was, you know, I'll be vulnerable here for a minute, but my mom ended up leaving when I was about 4 years old. Like, she just couldn't handle the responsibilities of being mom after my parents divorced. And I went to go live with my dad, and my mom was probably hurting. She was pretty embarrassed. She had just gone through a second divorce and was having a lot of challenges where she needed to just get her own head right. And I didn't see her for a couple of years. And it was very difficult when you're a 4-year-old and you don't see your mom for a few years. It can be very traumatic. And she sat me down and was like, look, don't make the same mistake that I did. Your issue right now is you see it as either or, okay? And it doesn't have to be that way. You have to change your dream to include being a parent rather than to say you have to choose one or the other. And that was a huge moment. That was a pivotal realization that it wasn't that I had to choose between these two different paths. It's just that the dream itself completely had to change. And it had to change to include being a parent, but also being an artist and all of those things. And certain times, one of those would take precedence over the other. Most of the time, it was parenting. Okay, like 99.9% of the time, parenting usually is the priority, friends. It's just the reality of it, depending on, you know, how your life is set up. But does that make sense? How we have to adjust a dream sometimes to include and accept the reality of our situation? I think it's just really important. I think this is very poignant for this Mercury retrograde, because a lot of us have dreams that are just untenable, and we cause ourselves suffering by trying to pursue them at any cost, and where we see things as either or. Mr. Hindsight is here. Says, namaste. So sorry to join so late. Left the house early to photograph the sunny San Francisco in the crystal clear light after yesterday's rain and wind. Well, I'm glad you're here, Mr. Hindsight. That sounds very beautiful. I would love to see San Francisco someday. Okay. All right. Let's keep moving forward. So, we have looked at the decans of Pisces. And now we are going to start looking at, let's see, what's next on the list? I have a list here. So we've broken down the host planet. We've broken down the different parts of the retrograde cycle. We've had a little stretch break. Do me a huge favor at this point in the channel here, the broadcast. Please like this video if you can. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. Turn on that notification bell. Go follow me over at spencermichaud.com, or go check it out. The Book Now button over there is where you can find my readings offerings. Go follow me at Twitter and Instagram and Threads at Spencer Michaud. I love hanging out and interacting with you on there. I'm most active probably on Instagram, so check me out there. But I do post on the other platforms every once in a while. There is a Spencer Michaud Astrology Facebook page if that's your preferred social media place as well. Okay. Alfay is here. What's up, Phil? Alfay, what's going on? Adjusting the dream. I tuned in just at the right time. Yeah. Nice to see you, friend. And yeah, that's comes with maturity. I think that oftentimes when we're young, we're idealistic and we don't really understand the limitations of incarnation. And some of that is beautiful. Some of that innocent striving allows us to do things that we would never be able to do if we instantly just said no. But sometimes when we have a dream and life constantly starts to hammer us down, when we're trying to pursue something that is not really in the cards, or a version of it that we idealize isn't in the cards. Sometimes by coming to terms with those limitations, we can create a better dream within those boundaries. That's the thing. I mean, the other thing about that is sometimes our vision isn't what we think it's going to be. At the end of the day, if I looked back on like the dreams that I've had to adjust, let's say I had pursued just trying to travel around the world doing music and maybe not being home for my family as much as I would have wanted to. I think I would have realized that that was a mistake and that it wouldn't have made me happy. I've been on tour a couple times very shortly, and I was kind of miserable doing it. And so for my own particular nature, I'm kind of a homebody. I like being at home. It's nice to be with my cats and in my own bed and have my own food and my own routines. It makes the Taurus moon in my chart very happy. And those relationships are important to me that I've built with all of those people and with those, I don't know, with this land, with this space. So sometimes, life is directing us in a direction that is meant for us. And I think that's another thing about having a little bit of a stoic perspective and surrendering to the Tao and going with the currents of your life. We can make changes, but we can also sometimes surrender to a divine plan that may be a better plan than what we had. We're not always right with our dreams and our visions, Just because we want something doesn't mean that it's appropriate for us. Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to pour cold water on anybody. I think that I believe in balance. And I think that once we have balance, and once we balance dreaming and reality, that's where we find satisfaction. And that's really the goal of that second decan of Pisces, is feel satisfied. That's what we see in the Nine of Cups, is a satisfied person. Okay. What's up, Kate? Kate's here. Nice to see you, Kate. Hope you're doing well, friend. Dawn says, right now is the perfect time to revisit and set new intentions. I agree. And as we get closer to the eclipse in the balsamic phase of the previous lunar cycle, it's a good time to let go of some things. Let's see. Elface is still growing up at 70. Yeah, we're all growing. We're all growing. We're all learning. That's a beautiful thing about life. We can make changes at any point. Dimpy says, sweet surrender. Absolutely. Reminds me of that. What is that? What's that song? Is that okay. Somebody remind me what that song was. I'm thinking Natalie Merchant, but I don't think it is. What is that other lady's name that's very similar to her? Well, somebody put it in the chat because I can't remember. Yeah, Kate says, I like that, Dawn. These are ninth house transits for me, and intention is everything. Well, Kate, you are here in time for us to start breaking this down by the rising signs. And I'm going to start pulling those up in a second. Painted Turtle says, yeah, but I'd like to hear you push the Buckley vibe. I'm crossing my fingers that I'll hear your musical aspirations in this next cycle of creativity. Yeah, we'll see, Painted Turtle. For those of you who are interested in my musical endeavors, I do have a Spencer Michaud Music YouTube channel. You can also find a SoundCloud where I have some unreleased demos on there, Spencer Michaud Music on SoundCloud. So if you are curious, you can engage with that. But yeah, maybe there will be something that I find in the underworld or the past of my vibe. And we'll see. We'll see. You never know. Okay. Just looking. All right, friends, I'm going to keep going in the interest of being concise today. I would love to get to every single comment, but we're just going to kind of be a little bit more. We're going to practice brevity today. So, friends, I'm going to put on the screen, and I'm doing this more so for not just my benefit, but for yours as well. Like, I do tend to kind of get tired around dinner time now. So I want to make sure that I'm giving you my best for the length of time that we have. All right, so Aries rising. We are going to pull you up on the screen here. We're going to start with the place where the sun is at. In this case, it's still in Aries. All right. So Aries rising. This is what I'm doing is I'm pulling up the moment of the kazimi. of Mercury for each of the rising signs. So the entirety of Mercury retrograde is happening in Aries. So this should show you the houses and the house relationships that the entire Mercury retrograde cycle will have. Sometimes Mercury retrogrades traverse two different signs, but in this case, it will be in Aries solely. So Aries rising, this is a Mercury retrograde in your first house. It is connecting its resources, or attempting to connect its resources, with the third house of Gemini and the sixth house of Virgo. So one of the things that we're looking at here is how our individual self-expression, first house, and how we relate to our bodies are going to be providing resources for the topics of our local communities, our extended family members, our siblings, our own intuition that is not related on orthodox spirituality, but is related to our inner wisdom, which is a third house Hellenistic signification, because it is the joy of the moon. We are also potentially connecting this realization from Mercury kazimi to the sixth house, which is related to, amongst other things, injury and illness, health issues that arise, can be related to small animals and pets. It is also related to everything that pulls us away from a completion, hard work, misfortune. So there may be some realization that we have about things that pull us away from completing things. And maybe that they're particularly related to daily habits and routines. So Aries rising may be getting a new burst of energy and a new set of downloads, if you will, about how to take better care of themselves and have the types of daily habits and routines that will support your dreams. Okay. Now Mars is going to be providing resources from the 12th house. So there may need to be a change, okay, in the way that you may be seeing an ending around an undermining influence, whether it's the way that you undermine yourself through self-doubt or through other people that try to undermine your confidence. The 12th house, remember, is a place that brings balance. I believe, since it is the joy of Saturn, which is also called the planet of Nemesis, that planets moving through the 12th house are trying to increase that which is lacking and decrease that which is excessive. They're going through a rebalancing process. So in this case, you might be having to let go of some old overconfidence that is really disrupting your daily habits and your routines and creating challenges for your body. So being able to move on from that and be more realistic about how you maybe undermine your own self-confidence could really help move you forward. Okay. Dawn says, Spencer, you and Gemini Brett should collaborate. I like Brett. Yeah, me and Brett have talked in the past. He was a guest at the Great Lakes Astrology Conference a few years ago. And I remember Brett taking us out and showing us various constellations and fixed stars. He's really great at a scientific understanding of the sky. And I like Brett. He's a good dude, and he's a saxophone player. So he and I have had some chats in the past, and I think that I'd be open to that. Okay. Devin says, stay on track, Spencer. You can do it. Thanks, Devin. Thanks for I appreciate your cheerleading. I've tried so hard today, buddy, to stay on track. I really like interacting with people in the chat, though, so that's why I do that. And I love being able to include people in the analysis. Oh, yeah, Tammy says, Sarah McLaughlin, sweet surrender. Thank you. Thank you for helping me with that, Tammy. But yes, Devin, good reminder. We're going to get through this. I'm going to be done by at 4:30 at the latest my time. Okay, so I'm trying to keep this to 2.5 hours, and maybe even shorter than that. But thank you for that reminder, friend. Okay, Aries rising. I got you. Let's go forward to Taurus rising. Okay, Taurus risings. And I'm curious, one of the things that I'm, without getting too far down this rabbit hole, are you all enjoying the rising sign analysis? Because I really enjoy like just breaking down the just the components of these like kazimis, etc. But the rising sign thing might be a perk of some sort of membership program or something eventually. And I hope that I wouldn't offend too many people if that's how it ends up going down. But in the interest of staying concise and making the content interesting for everyone on the channel, and for those who want the extra level, maybe that might be something to consider. If too many people are like, no, you have to keep the risings on the channel, I will consider it. But one thing that I'm kind of thinking about in regards to that, and if I did do that, it wouldn't be insurmountable. All right, Taurus rising, let's stay on track. Devin's going to keep me on track. So Taurus rising, this Mercury kazimi is happening in your 12th house. It is providing resources for your second, okay, and for your fifth, okay, and the Saturn Mars conjunction is coming together in your 11th house. So there's topics where we're going to have to blend all of these types of things together to understand what's going to be going on for you. So this could be, Don says, I'd pay for it. I love it. Okay, good. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Again, this is part of how we are trying to be of service, review what is working and what isn't for ourselves. I'm going through that process just like all of you, seeing what works and what doesn't. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Hindsight says, love the rising sign talks because it's necessary to learn about the others. Yeah, I think that's great to be able to understand other people's perspectives and what they're going through is very valuable. I agree. Okay, so Taurus rising, 12th house Mercury kazimi. This is a realization about how you undermine yourself, how others might undermine you. I really like that word for the 12th house. There's secret enemies and undermining influences. Sometimes undermining can just be a lack of confidence. But the other significations is related to finding balance once again. So maybe there is something in the way that you communicate, Taurus rising, where it's been out of balance. Maybe you've been overly enthusiastic about something. Maybe you haven't been enthusiastic enough, and those planets are giving you insight into how that might be counterproductive. Oftentimes when we see the sign that we see on the 12th house via whole sign houses here is a place where we have some of our most difficult challenges. So like myself being a Leo rising, I have Cancer in the 12th house. Some of the most difficult experiences I've had has been through my family, just through my parents, through being a parent. And it's challenging. A lot of Leo risings can probably relate to this. Not every single one, but there's probably something that they have gone through with a family member. So every Taurus rising may have some difficulty sometimes advocating for their own needs. That might be one of the undermining influences. There might be some dominant figure in their life that makes it hard for them to advocate for their own needs. And this could be just the tenor of somebody in your life that could be an undermining influence. Now, the other thing about the 12th house is it can be related to periods of solitude, anything that would pull us away from a sense of personal empowerment. So understanding what would pull you away from health and vitality, from advocating for your own needs, could be working through this Mercury retrograde cycle. The second house and the fifth house. Second house is related to resources, how you support yourself, everything that supports you. It's related to food. It's related to money. It's related to people that support you. And the fifth house is related to creativity, children, how you pass a legacy on over time. So oftentimes when you see second and fifth house matters coming together, there's some sort of expense related to a child or to a creative project, or you could be reevaluating how you seek pleasure and whether that's healthy for you or not. With Mars providing resources from the 11th house, you might be going through a period where some of your illusions or dreams regarding a group that you're a part of are changing. And you're having to get a big reality check about the types of people that you interact with. Oftentimes, Taurus risings will be the ones that are just kind of sitting patiently in the background and just like absorbing all the energy of the group. And sometimes that can get exhausting if the group isn't healthy. And making a change can be tough because there's always the issue of inertia with Taurus. It's sometimes when they commit to something, it's very hard for them to decommit. It's sometimes also very hard to get started with something. So those are two ways of looking at that. I relate to that as a Taurus moon. There's times when I feel so loyal to whatever I've committed to that it's very hard to stop doing it. Even if I know that a change is necessary, just making a change is like, I always compare it to like turning an oil tanker around. It's like beep, beep, beep. It just takes forever, but once we get started, it's the same thing. Stopping is very difficult. So I think Tauruses their first answer is usually no. And that's because they know that once they've committed to something, very difficult to uncommit. So keep in mind, if you have Taurus influences in your chart, be very careful about what you commit to, because it will be more difficult than most to make a shift. Okay. I'm just going through the chat here. Let's see. Steven says, I've always been curious about how others tick, not just myself. I love to research and investigate. Yeah, this is one of the beauties of doing astrology and just being able to understand other people. Devin says, I think that makes sense. I think that's in relationship to doing the rising signs, potentially in a membership program. Again, I'm not going to make this inaccessible for people. If I do that, I will try to make it as accessible as possible. And I'm still going to do live streams. I'm still going to give away a lot of information. I just can't not. I think that's the thing. I've really struggled with the paywall thing. But at the same time, we all have to keep evolving. And for me to continue doing the work that I do on this channel, I have to continue to evolve. So again, I won't belabor the point, but I do like crowdsourcing opinions and information as well. So let's see. I'm just making sure that I'm getting everything here. Have you considered, Rihanna, Revis, I believe that's Rihanna. Have you considered making access pay tiered based on income, for example? This would allow you to keep it accessible to all if people can pay according to what they can afford income-wise. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I would take that under consideration. I'd have to see how that would look, but yeah, there's no bad ideas in the brainstorm, friends. Let's see. Okay, Painted Turtle just got a dog. Oh, congratulations! That's like a little fur baby. Childhood joy. Okay, so yeah. So is your husband a Taurus rising, Painted Turtle? It says, we just got a dog and my husband just throwing the ball to the dog across the field has really helped bring back his childhood joy. Interesting. Let's see. So we're getting to Gemini rising, Jennifer, in a second, but I'm going to stay focused here. These are great comments. I just don't want to get too sidetracked here, friends. So let's keep going to Gemini rising. So Gemini rising, you have the Mercury kazimi and the Mercury retrograde cycle through your 11th house. Reevaluating how you communicate within the group. That will bring you some insights that will be connected to your sense of self. It will be connected also to your home and your family and your parents. Okay, like this is 1st and 4th house that Mercury is providing resources for and getting reinvigorated towards. We're also seeing Mars and Saturn coming together in your 10th house. So there might be the death of an illusion or a death of an over-optimistic dream, and hence a reality check around your work or how you express yourself out publicly, or how you find meaning in life, what your purpose is, what your praxis is. So all of those things could be coming together with those particular topics. This is an interesting one for you Mercury ruled ascendants, because you may be feeling it more acutely than others, because that is the ruling planet. That's the helm of your ascendant. That's the steering wheel of your life. So this could be an especially important kazimi for you Gemini and Virgo risings, because you're getting some really important insight into how you attract or repel people within the group potentially. Jennifer says, missed everything. I'm back, so I don't know what you said. For Gemini rising, you didn't miss anything. You just got it. But tomorrow I'm going to finally visit my grandmother, whose birthday is today. She's turning 104 years old, and with my dad is 81. So yeah, you're revisiting someone within your family, a group that you were a part of. They had shared values. It might be seeing the change within a mother figure. Remember, the 10th house is also related to the mother in Hellenistic astrology, Jennifer. So these are themes that are going to be coming up, and being able to see how you relate to those groups and what ways you can get people on board with your vision. I know that at this stage of our lives, oftentimes we're responsible for older relatives, and getting them on board with plans that would be in their best interest can be a challenge sometimes. But often it's through the delivery that we'll be able to shift that vision to get them on board with what is best for not only them, but for everybody. Dawn says, I have Saturn in Taurus, and that resonates so deeply. I never let go once I commit. Yeah, right? I mean, this is us Tauruses. We don't necessarily enjoy dramatic change. Every once in a while, we need some novelty, but dramatic change is like, nah, I think I'll just stick with what I've got, and that's good enough. And sometimes that's a great quality, and other times it's really limiting. So we have to make sure that we're not getting in a rut rather than just a healthy routine. Jennifer says, we've had a rift in the family for 35 years, feeling very anxious. Mercury is hitting my sun, Cancer ascendant, Gemini, both at 28 degrees. So Jennifer, remember, we talked about, well, earlier in the show, if you missed it, we talked about this decan of Aries, third decan, is really about winning over a hostile crowd through our charisma, through humor, through social graces. So to be able to move forward, you may have to crack a joke, lighten the mood a little bit, right? Especially if there's been difficulty in the past. And I think that this retrograde cycle of Mercury can help with that. Okay, Gemini rising, we're going to move on to Cancer rising. So Cancer rising, you have the Mercury kazimi in the 10th house. You are providing resources with that kazimi for the 12th house and for the 3rd house. Okay, so topics related to undermining influences, solitude, but also with the 3rd house related to your daily habits and routines, the wisdom that arises from within, siblings and extended family members. So there might be something associated with either your job or your sense of purpose out in the world. And you may have to reevaluate how you are communicating that, and it may have direct effects towards, the places in your life that are liminal spaces. The 12th house also relates to the place between worlds, right? The 3rd house is the place between family, like the extended family members. So your personal expression out in the world, maybe professionally, is having an effect and a renewal effect on those types of relationships. Now, you're also going through a Mars-Saturn conjunction in the 9th house, where a lot of your philosophical beliefs potentially are shifting. You could also have some conflicts that are coming up related to the law or the legal system. Maybe there's an ending of an education dream or a teaching dream or something of that nature. The 9th house is often associated with higher education, whether it's taking an advanced degree or a new course of study or teaching it. So I would be careful, Cancer rising, about starting a new teaching program and make sure that you're not biting off more than you can chew, I guess will be what I would say around that. Try to keep it within your limits, okay, that you're comfortable with. I think that the Aries eclipse is going to push us a little bit outside of our comfort zone. I think there's no denying that. But I think that we can take steps to make that either sustainable or not. And I think that if we're realistic about what we can and can't achieve, and allow time to be our friend. Remember we said make fate our friend? Well, make time your friend. Sometimes we get impatient, and that's when we tend to make mistakes. So working with time, working with our resources, and accepting those resources and the limitations around them can help us have more successful outcomes rather than overshooting the mark. Okay, so that's Cancer rising. Let me see if I missed anything with that. I think we're good. Let's keep going. I'm going a little quicker today. Leo rising. Leo risings, we have the Mercury retrograde cycle going through our 9th house. It is providing resources for the 11th and the 2nd house. It is also being hosted by Mars, who has just come together with Saturn in our 8th house. And we may be changing our belief systems. There could be some reviews over our own higher education, our own teaching modules, etc. It could be affecting a group or money from the government or our own resources that support us. We could be seeing the ending of either some challenges or a dream or overconfidence in regards to a debt. It could be related to the resources of a partner as well. We don't want to get too overconfident in relying on a partner to support us, right? As a Leo rising or something like that. Like sometimes we have to move under our own power. This is another thing to think about with this eclipse season. There's going to be some situations where you're going to have to move under your own power. And it may not be by choice. There may be circumstances, fated circumstances that come to all of us during this eclipse season that light a fire under us that say, well, you're not going to just be able to sit around and twiddle your thumbs anymore. You've got responsibilities. You might have to break new ground to figure out how to move forward with your life. And I've been kicking around those ideas for months on this channel. And again, I've been dragging my feet Taurus moon style. But for Leo risings, you might have something that will fundamentally shake up your belief system and how you share that belief system with others. And it could change your status around the groups that you share beliefs with. And it might also change your financial situation. Many of you have been witnessing me musing, going back and forth about how to best financially support the work that I do in the channel here. So those are things that maybe there will be an insight. All of you have had really great ideas. Like I've been crowdsourcing information about what the needs of the group would be and what a good methodology would be to do that. That's an example of like how I've been going through that process as a Leo rising and crowdsourcing information about resources. I've also been going through some stuff with my student loans. So like I won't go into all the details with all that stuff today, but there is trying to remedy some past debts, like a student loan with Mars and Saturn coming together, and going back and reviewing those old loans to try to move forward under my own power in particular. So that is something as an example of like what that could be, what that could look like potentially. Okay. All right. So that's Leo rising, friends. I'm sorry I'm not getting to every single comment today. I'm trying to do this in the interest of brevity and time. If there's any questions that come up, I'll be happy to answer those. If it's more about a comment, I read them, but I might not be able to just include every single one of them in the broadcast today. So I hope that sorry, I'm being in an Aries now, right? We don't have all day. Is what Venus in Aries says. Oh man. Let's see here. So we are at Virgo rising now, and let me pull up my little marker. So Virgo rising has the Mercury kazimi and the Mercury retrograde cycle in the 8th house. It is providing resources to the topics of the 10th house and to the 1st. So when we have a 1st-10th combination, oftentimes who we are and our bodies are utilized in what we do out in the world, whether it's our job or whether it's our passion, whatever that could be. And a realization about how you share resources with others and how you communicate around those resources and get people on board with your vision could be helping you to understand how to move forward in those other two topics. Now, Mars and Saturn are coming together in your 7th house. So there might be a shift or some, hardships that you're having to overcome in a relationship. There may have been some overconfidence within a relationship or within a partnership, and you're having to deal with the ramifications of that. And you could be getting some really important information around a debt, around a shared resource, around an inheritance, etc. Okay? All right. Let me see here. Just looking through the chat again here. Okay. So Virgo rising, you are another one of those rising signs that is ruled by Mercury. So this one could be a really important one for you. Remember, when Mercury is renewed in the heart of the sun, it's being infused with life. So one of the things to keep in mind, friends, is that when Mercury goes under the beams, the particular topics that I'm trying to tie together could get worse before they get better. Does that make sense? There might be a job issue that's just really, really frustrating, and you might be having difficult conversations trying to win other people towards your vision. But then it will start to improve once we get to the kazimi, and it starts to separate towards that rising from under the beams of the sun. Okay, let's keep going. I'm going to look through the comments here and see what we've got. Check in with all of you before we get to Libra. At a balance point, we're gonna take a stretch at Libra. Okay. Jennifer says natal Mercury is conjoined Sun and Mars is in the rising sign. Okay. So communicate with patience. All I've ever wanted was for everyone to hear each other and be respected. That's a great way to deal with a family issue. Sometimes you can't force people to get along though, Jennifer, and that's important to realize. So if you can state your values and who you are and what you hope for the group, that's all you can do. And then other people get to make their choices around it. Painted Tarot says, Spencer, when you think about offering horoscopes by sign in some way by membership, what may make the horoscope more valuable and more personal without getting natal involved is to track some of the transits in a tangible way. For instance, the moon, one thing I like about astrologers is to track sensitive points. Like there was an eclipse here 2 years ago and what issues come up. That's a good idea. Then some type of tracking that you could do to bring the larger picture together for them, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so connecting them back to points previously in our lives and in our time and etc. Yeah, that's a good idea. I think that's the thing too. If I were to separate this out from the live streams, it would give me an opportunity to come to it fresh without already being an hour and a half into it. And I would be able to add other details and we could do it live. We could do it pre-recorded. It could be either way. If what you really enjoy is interacting and asking questions, then I will take that into consideration. If what you really want is the information succinctly, this is the difficult thing, friends, is people want different things out of their content creators and their communities. Some people love hanging out for multiple hours and chatting and having the social interaction. Other people want to come and get the information and get out and whatever. And it's really hard to make everyone happy. So I will do the best that I can to hear everyone's perspective and figure out what the most people want, while also taking into account what I need, and what I need to get out of it as well as a part of the equation. And that's really important for this series of eclipses, is to not necessarily be selfish, but to put yourself in the equation. Because if you're doing everything for everyone else and you're not taking your own needs into account, eventually that leads to burnout and resentment. And that's not sustainable. Nobody wins when that happens. So yeah. Big Steph says it. You can't please everyone, Spencer. Please yourself first. Yeah, or like I said, Big Steph, at least make yourself part of the discussion, right? Painted Turtle says, I love what you do currently. I'm just saying if you wanted to have some content on a pay scale, the one thing you could do is differentiate the two. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, no bad ideas in the brainstorm. So I definitely appreciate everyone who's been reaching out and giving their viewpoint and their ideas and their brainstorms. I definitely am hearing you and seeing you, even if I haven't been able to respond to everything. I'm doing my best to incorporate that in while also seeing what I would feel motivated to do too. One of the things that is tough for me, and I won't belabor this point for too long because we have more horoscopes to go, is every time we split things up into different smaller sections, that creates a lot more work for me, like promoting it, putting it together, different times. Sometimes I feel like when I sit down in one particular session, I can get all of my thoughts out at one point, and then I can go rest, and then I can go do it again. The like, let's do a video every single day thing did not work for me. And for a number of reasons. This isn't my only job. Like, I do readings. So I do readings in the middle of the week. I also teach classes. So I'm trying to balance being a reader, a teacher, and a broadcast producer, and my own promo team. So those are the reasons why, like, sometimes I like to compartmentalize those things a little bit. So, yeah. Don says, I sent you an email. Something. Yeah, I saw that today, Don. I got that email just right before the live stream, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond. But those are great ideas, and thank you for sending along some examples that I can maybe model around, because I agree. I think those were good ideas, and I like the model that you sent me. Painted Turtle giving me hearts. Yes, thank you, friends. Yeah, we're all doing the best we can here. And again, I'm so grateful for all of you as a community, as an audience, like, and as a collaborator. I don't take that for granted. So I don't want to do things that will alienate my audience. This is you're seeing this in real time, an internal dialogue related to Aries 3 of, we're reviewing how we can get people on board with the vision here at Spencer Michaud Astrology, right? And everyone's going to have an opinion, and then we have to take all those things into consideration and then move forward with what works best, right? Don says, daily doesn't work for most. They tend to start rushing through, and it feels contrived. I need to be inspired, and I need some time to meditate on my stuff. And if I'm just creating content just to make content and I don't feel it in my heart, people can tell. So I don't ever want to get to that point. And I tried that for a little while, and it started to feel like that, Dawn. So again, there are certain people that are able to do that really, really well, and different strokes for different folks. So anyway, let's keep going. You all have great ideas though, and thank you so much for the suggestions, the expressing what works for you, and stuff like that. Yeah. Steven says, oh my God, I can't do a daily broadcast on my YouTube channel. I feel the same way. Yeah, who can? I mean, there's some superheroes out there that can do that, and they have otherworldly endurance, but I mean, I do at one point, and then I have to like pass out for 3 days or whatever it is. But I know there's a lot of people that couldn't do what I do, like sit here for 3 or 4 hours and talk. And I'm trying to cut that down so that I'm bringing you the freshest part of myself. But there might have to be some changes around the content to be able to achieve that regularly. Yeah, followers may not come daily. Absolutely. Again, there are so many different ways to live. There are so many different ways to both create and consume astrology content on the internet. I may not be for everyone. I may be, the cat's pajamas for some people. So I'm okay with that. I think that's the thing. And I know that I ask a lot of people's opinions, but at the end of the day, friends, it's my channel. I'm going to do what I want. So I think that's something we have to kind of realize, is that it has to make you happy. If you don't feel connected to your vision in these next few weeks, other people aren't going to be into it. And I think the reason that a lot of people really enjoy what I do here is that I truly enjoy the things that I do here. I love talking about the decans. I love talking about the fixed stars. I love talking about tarot. And you can tell when I'm excited about something. I love talking about sports. So this is the thing where what can arouse your passion, and how can you share that passion with others? And once you're able to do that, people will just want to be on board because your energy is is good. Okay. All right. So let's go back. Let's talk about Libra rising. So Libra rising, you have this Mercury cycle, this Mercury retrograde cycle in your 7th house. It is connected and providing resources for the 9th house and for the 12th. So for you Libra risings out there, you may be reviewing a relationship challenge. It may be connected to travel. It could be connected to pursuing higher education or teaching. But also it could be related to how in a partnership, your beliefs or your partner's beliefs could be undermining confidence. Maybe there's something that you want to start with a partner related to teaching, related to a class or something, and you have to start figuring out how you can communicate with one another so that you don't undermine each other's confidence. Oftentimes, Libra rising will check in with people and get permission and all of those things. I'm a Libra part of spirit. Like that's sort of kind of one of my vibes too. So I have that kind of energy as well. And at the end of the day, this eclipse season is encouraging us to do slightly less of that. And I'll try to follow my own advice here, but it doesn't mean that we as Libra types have to give up our ability to create win-win situations. It just means that, like Big Steph was telling us, we can't necessarily make everyone happy all the time. So for example, like some people may only be able to tolerate a 10-minute astrological report. Some people may love a 4-hour astrological report. They're just different needs for different people. So for you, Libra rising, try to think about what insights you may be getting into how your beliefs are either encouraging you to step out on your own or maybe taking away from that. And especially through how you communicate with the partners in your life. Now, this kazimi is going to be hosted by Mars coming together with Saturn in your 6th house. So there could also be a challenge around maybe you're doing a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of extra work that you're not getting credit for. Maybe there's some things that are pulling you off of your ability to bring something to completion. This is another thing that 7th house represents is completions and ceremonies related to completions, like weddings is a ceremony, right? And also death. So this could be like an understanding about what types of actions in your life pull you away from completing things. And how can you get insight into removing some of those things? And it could also be a health challenge. Maybe one thing that can really take us away from completing things is not having good health. So maybe there's something where we might be overestimating the amount of work that we're able to do, and we have to be more realistic about that so that we don't burn ourselves out. So that's kind of the analysis of Mars and Saturn coming together in the 6th house. You also could be having a change in the way that you see a practitioner that you work with. I think another thing that we don't talk about enough with the 6th house is 6th house is related to like, doctors and like service providers, people we have under contract that do services for us. So there could be challenges working with somebody in that capacity where you might have to sever or separate from that as well. Okay. Painted Turtle says, by the way, having been in one of your classes, I find that what is most valuable about you is the interaction with you, which is so funny because you say you're so much like a hermit. You have such great energy. You are one of the rare YouTube or public astrologers who really are who you are when you interact. There is no public face to you versus what it's like to be face to face. Oh, I appreciate that, Painted Turtle. That to me is one of the hallmarks of doing Leo rising correctly. And I say that because to me, the goal of being a Leo ascendant is how can my inner world and inner character be in alignment with my outer expression, my authenticity. So yeah, when you see me on this channel, it is this is who I am. There are other parts of me that I don't necessarily share with the public. Just I can get angry sometimes about things, and I can be pretty stubborn about stuff, but some of that comes out here too. I try to be the best version of myself, at least the kindest version. I'm not immune to complaining about things or being a little bitchy behind the scenes sometimes. So I try to limit that. But I try to model kindness, and I try to model that in my personal life as well as in my public life. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that encouragement. I love working with people in a class interaction. I love teaching. I mean, that's real. My love for teaching is real. Like I had a tutoring student the other day, and I was just getting so fired up by sharing. This was a person that I had as a student. This was a very Mercury retrograde in the ninth. I had someone as a student who was part of the first astrology class I ever taught at a Rec and Ed class in 2014, and it was very much related to modern my knowledge of modern astrology up to that point. And in the 10 years since we've talked, a lot has changed from my own understanding and from my own, life. And we had a really great time catching up and, learning about the differences between modern and traditional astrology. And I couldn't contain myself really about how just sharing those differences, like getting the thoughts from my brain to my mouth was like, wow, there's so much I need to tell you. Like that's the thing I love about teaching is I just need to, there's so many things, there's so many different details and techniques. And so I was really feeling passionate about that and the teaching part of it. So thank you for that encouragement, friend. Devin says, Katie and I are reviewing the health of our fur baby, Blue. Luckily, Katie has Jupiter in Pisces, keeping him safe. Oh, Devin. So Devin is a Libra rising. So he's referring to, the chart here we've got with Mars and Saturn in the sixth house, which can be related to fur babies and like pets, right? And it is nice that you have Jupiter in there, friend, because that is probably a mitigating influence in that chart for sure. So yeah, maybe there's just a health issue with the pet that is coming to a fore, and hopefully Blue is getting the care and that they need. I know that we're very, very pet friendly on this channel. Like I have 2 cats that I love dearly, and we go through a lot of commiserating when our fur babies are in trouble. So I'm sending them all the love in the world, and hopefully it all works out for the 2 of you. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. So Scorpio rising. Scorpio. That's my favorite way to say Scorpio anymore. Scorpio. Kind of works because our president is a Scorpio sun. I always call him Scorpio. So Scorpio rising, 6th house retrograde Mercury cycle. It is providing resources for the 8th house and for the 11th house. So there may be some important insights and realizations about your work, about the work that you do that you might not get credit for. There could also be something with a pet in your life going on. But it's also going to give you insights into how you share resources with others, and particularly with a group. There could be an issue that is related to your own personal creativity with the Mars and Saturn coming together in your 5th house. So it could be an issue with a child that's creating a lot of work for you, and an understanding of work that's taking you away from a sense of completion. The other thing that is important about that Mars-Saturn conjunction is Mars is the ruler of your ascendant. So there may be some difficulty right now coming and finding pleasure as a Scorpio rising, and coming to terms with the reality of your situation versus what you hoped it would be, right? I have often seen Scorpio anythings really having to deal with letting go of people, of situations, of material goods, of addictions. Scorpio really is that composting energy. And oftentimes when Scorpio gets into trouble is when they hang on too tightly, and when the loss is so painful that they're trying to disassociate from it through other means. And then they will often go through a rebirth, having to deal with some of those challenges. Not true for every Scorpio rising. It's not true for every Scorpio placement. But that is a theme that I often see. Scorpio, if I was talking earlier about how to do Leo well, like authenticity between inner and outer expression, the way that Scorpio can do that sign well is through accepting that there will be change in your life and that forms need to be released when they aren't providing vitality to you anymore. And having faith. This is where the faith part of Scorpio comes in, that you will be able to rise above those challenges and move forward in your life and have a rebirth. Okay, that rebirth energy is real. Sometimes Scorpios like to defend that dying life force, but this Mercury kazimi is going to give you a lot of insight into how you communicate around what you are or aren't willing to do in regards to a group endeavor. It could be related to a debt that you are trying to work through with connection to the 8th house, and money from the government with connection to the 11th house. Remember, it's the derived 2nd house from the 10th. But the big changes in your 5th, right? Big changes in the way you seek pleasure, potentially. I think that one of the things that to keep in mind, friends, with this Mercury retrograde cycle is the core of it is coming from Mars. So that Mars-Saturn conjunction is really important for this, to understand where the core of these actions are coming from, okay? So really pay attention to that Pisces topic in your life to see where you're trying to draw strength, or where circumstances, maybe even not of your own fault, maybe pushing you to move under your own power. Okay, oftentimes Mars will bring us circumstances that are kind of bad luck, that we didn't do anything wrong. That's just malus tuque, bad fortune. Okay. Oftentimes Saturn brings us challenges through neglect, through chronic issues that maybe we've been ignoring, an issue in our life that we need to deal with. So when bad fortune comes to an issue we've been ignoring, you can imagine what the combination of those two things can be about. So I wish you luck, Scorpio rising. Hang in there. You should get some really good insights about either contractors that you work with as well, or practitioners that you work with, and how to communicate your own needs when you are providing services for others as well, and how to maybe not take on too much responsibility that you won't get credit for. Candy's Corn says, I love it, but I wouldn't mind paying. Okay, we got someone voting for rising signs potentially as a perk. Mr. Hindsight says, me too, recharts for everyone I meet. Good. Revis Rihanna says, I'm a Scorpio rising. Do you interpret the 5th in relationship to romantic relationships at all? Yes, with a few caveats. So first of all, I don't interpret the 8th house as sex at all. I would say traditional astrologers don't necessarily do that. I would say sexuality and pleasure is the 5th house. I would say sexuality and relationships and pleasure can also be the 7th house if it's in relationship to an other, right? So romantic relationships to me are mostly 7th and 5th house things, with, again, how you seek pleasure within the relationship being more related to the 5th. There are other themes associated with it, that children, like what is the outcome of sex? It's children, oftentimes. 5th house can also be what happens after a an ending. Fourth house can be associated with like legacies and death, but the fifth house is the succeedent house of the fourth, which means that's that which comes after. So what do you pass on? You pass on your children as a legacy. You pass on a creative project as a legacy. But I definitely look at the fifth house for how we seek entertainment and pleasure in our lives. It is the joy of Venus. So think about Venus things associated with it. So that could be romance. It could be what we enjoy in life. And when you have a difficult, thing going on in your fifth house, let's say you have excesses that you need to work on. That can be shown through fifth house issues. So yeah, that's a good question. And let's say you have an exiled planet in the fifth house and it's a malefic. Maybe there was a time in your life where you pursued pleasure and it brought you pain. And you've had to learn to sever, let's say it's Mars or something. And you've had to learn to sever your desire for something that once brought you pleasure, but through excess brought you pain. Okay, so there's one way to look at that. Let's say you're looking for a romantic partner and you have Venus moving through your fifth house. That could be an indicator of like romance coming into your life. Same with Jupiter, so an expansion of those things. Oftentimes what I've seen with Jupiter, if Jupiter's moving to your fifth house, sometimes that means that you're going to have a baby, like that you're going to have more, that it's going to make it bigger. I know when I had the fourth house Jupiter transit in my own chart, like my daughter came to live with me after a custody change. And then I had to do a lot of like child rearing when Jupiter moved into the fifth house. Fifth house also can relate to sports. When Jupiter was in the fifth house, I was very, very involved with my daughter's swimming and her swim team. So I was doing a lot of sporting things. Jupiter was in Sagittarius, so it was happy there doing that. So I hope that helps answer the question, friend. Melissa's here. Says, hi, Spencer, and all in the chat. Just got home. Yeah, Melissa, we're taking the Mercury retrograde through the rising signs today. So I'm glad that you're here. Candy Corn says you need to pay the light bill. Yeah, and the furnace bill, and the mortgage, and all of the other bills. So yeah, absolutely. Everyone's got needs, even if they self-sacrifice a lot for the good of the group. Steven says pleasure and sex is fun. Fifth house themes. Yeah, absolutely. Candy Corn says, or a cheap Patreon, $5 a month. Yeah, all sorts of options, friends. There could be memberships through my own website. We could do something on buymeacoffee.com. There's memberships there. I really like that platform. So that might be a way to do it. We'll see. One day at a time. I love all the ideas, though. Like I said, no bad ideas in the brainstorm. We're still in the brainstorming phase of this. But I'm just trying to give everyone a heads up so that they don't show up one day and are like, where's this? Where did you do this? But again, I can't control everyone's whether they enjoy what I do or not. I'm going to be able to make some people happy, and other people are going to, not like what I do. So that's okay. Thank you so much, friend. Rihanna, for the super sticker. Appreciate you. That is the best way to support the channel right now. Appreciate you. If you want to support the channel, that you can hit that little $sign in the chat today. It's called a super chat or super sticker. You can also buy me coffee at buymeacoffee.com. So appreciate you being here. Really enjoy seeing new faces and new voices in the chat, and appreciate the support. Paying Turtle says, making money off subscriptions for one, but also he doesn't seem to think many astrologers are on Twitch, so you might be the market there. Oh, I missed a comment. My husband suggested Twitch as a platform for you when we were brainstorming. Oh boy, is that like the gaming platform? I don't know. The only thing that comes to mind with Twitch is like attractive girls that like do like live stream video games, but maybe I'm wrong on that. This is just cliche. I'm just not familiar with that world beyond what my very limited understanding of it is. So yes, that's a good idea though. Like you said, no bad ideas in the brainstorm. And if there's an underserved market for astrology, I'm open to it. Jennifer says, how is Scorpio energy different in depth for the other water signs when it comes to intuition? Ooh, that's a good question, Jennifer. Let me think about that for a second. So I think that you have to look at the ruling planet. And in this case, it's Mars. So if we look at Jupiter ruling Pisces, the moon ruling Cancer, the quote unquote intuition that is arising, the wisdom that is arising, has different purpose. I think that the intuition of Scorpio coming from Mars is for self-preservation. So they may have a intuition related to defending any type of dying life force, or a super, like a spidey sense. Scorpios may have an intuition that is very related to danger. They may have a really acute sense of when they might be in danger and when they need to leave a situation, or when they need to fight, but in like a secretive way, I guess, if that makes sense. Let's see. Yeah, Steven says Scorpio energy is tense and under the surface like a glacier. All energy is hidden underneath and fixed. Yeah, the fixed part is important too. But I think, like I said, Mars in Scorpio is defending a dying life force. It also, Jennifer, has the ability to potentially recognize when it needs to sever from a spirit from a body. So to me, the severing action of Mars through Scorpio is releasing a form that is no longer providing vitality. And when we release the old form, we may be able to be reborn in a new form. Okay? So I think Scorpios may also have a unique intuition about knowing when to let go of something that other people may not. Now, without belaboring this too long, but I love teaching on this channel, so forgive me for a small teaching digression. If we compare that to Pisces and Cancer, the Cancer intuition being ruled by the moon may be an intuition towards nurturing, an intuition towards comfort and creating a sense of home, creating a sense of like a bodily intuition that is important for providing a maternal energy of that, or of some nature, right? I think that the Pisces intuition, being a Jupiterian intuition, is a bridge builder, is a peacemaker. I think Pisces have a unique intuition related to how to create and dissolve boundaries between peoples and between worlds. So I think it's really important to look at the signs not just as a set of archetypal features, but as terrains and houses and temples of a specific planetary deity or god. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Devin says Scorpion's intuition comes from cutting and separating of the self and bringing it back together like alchemy. Ooh, good. I love that. Then we can recognize these things in others. Yes. And that, Devin, that's a great point, because that is something that is, I think, related to the decans on some level, because we can see in the second decan of Scorpio, which is called Mutual Distillation in 36 Faces by Austin Coppock, where we are having the quickening of the sun. It's a solar decan. So you separate something in the first decan, Mars ruled, and then you kind of quicken that energy. It alchemizes, it changes, and then you have a new form afterwards. It's the, but believe the Negredo phase. I might be completely butchering my alchemy terms, but yeah, that's a good point. Alchemy is really an important part of that. Painted Tarot says, I recently read Scorpio moons in particular read the facial expressions to understand and connect with emotions and emotional boundaries. This is especially true when you think that a scorpion sting is definitely getting a facial, DEF getting a facial reaction. Yeah, I mean, I think all the water signs are looking for nonverbal communications. I know as a Scorpio sun, I'm sorry, I'm not Cancer sun. Sorry, as a Cancer sun myself and Mercury, there is a lot of communication that I pick up on from people's body language, and honestly, that makes this work that I'm doing, interacting with all of you just through words, interesting because I can't see any of your facial expressions. And when I do classes and when I do readings, I very much desire to have people on camera with me so that I can see what their face is doing and what their body language is doing when I'm communicating some of the themes and having a conversation with them, because a lot of the times their reaction will tell me a lot about what that particular sign and symbol may mean. If I'm describing a mythological theme and I can see the recognition on their face, or I see them wincing or something, then it's an opportunity to explore that further with gentleness and ask more questions. Okay. And I think that that's especially true for water type people, is paying attention to that body language. All right, let's keep going, friends. Let's go to Sagittarius rising. Some good learning digressions, though. I love that. Where are we? We're 411. We're going to do this in 20 minutes. We're going to get through Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and then the I-Ching and the animal in 20 minutes. Okay? That's my goal. I'm not saying we necessarily get there, but let's try it. Your comments are awesome. Keep them coming, but I'm going to try not to get too distracted by them right now. Fair enough? Fair enough. I still love all of you. I want to acknowledge that you're all here, but let's see if we can get through this. Okay. So Sagittarius rising, 5th house Mercury kazimi. Remember, we've just broken down the 5th house in the previous Scorpio analysis, where we were talking about pleasure. We were talking about the joy of Venus and everything Venusian, how we attract, how we maybe even how we process our emotions and go through things cathartically. It's also associated with children in traditional astrology. So there might be some important realizations about how you communicate your creative desires, whether it's through your children, whether it's through your creative process, whether it is through how you seek pleasure. You could be experiencing some difficult circumstances, or the impetus for these changes that you're making in your 5th house through the Mars-Saturn conjunction in your 4th house, related to your family, through your domestic situation, through your parents, through your roots. So maybe there is something that's going on with your parents or your family where you're having some disappointments of a dream, or there's a blockage or something, and that's having to lead to some ways that you re-examining the way you seek pleasure. Now, Mercury is providing resources for both the 7th and the 10th house. So these realizations about your creative process could have some effects on the way that you express yourself publicly. They could also have some effect on your relationship. So those two things are going to be brought in with those themes in particular. Okay. One other thing to keep in mind, Sagittarius rising, is that Jupiter is very near to coming together with Uranus in your 6th house. So there may be some liberation as far as a health issue that's been bothering you for a long time, where you're having to go in and remediate and fix a previous mistake or neglect, and you may find that you're finally liberated from a thing that's been bothering you for a long time. So if you have to go to the dentist or something like that, that could be an example of getting a cavity filled in or something like that, Sag rising. That could be a Jupiter-Uranus thing, that if you've been neglecting doing something like that, it's a great time to do so. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Capricorn rising. Hello, my Cap rising friends. Capricorn rising has a new moon, or not new moon, has the Mercury retrograde and kazimi in the 4th house, related to home and family. There could be some insight and realization around your parents, around your home and your living situation, your domestic situation. There could be something related to bringing you insights, into your 6th house and your 9th house. So there could be a review of how you communicate with your family in regards to your belief systems, maybe around a long distance journey, and potentially around a health issue. There could be something going on where you're reviewing something with your health and getting some insight into that. You could also be having insight and reviewing how you work with a contractor of some sort. Let's say that Capricorn rising is doing a remodel of their house or something like that, and they're getting a big spotlight on the contractor that they're working with, which is a 6th house signification. And that may be changing their beliefs around working with people in that capacity, or maybe you have to shift something with that. Cap rising also has that Saturn, Mars conjunction coming together in Pisces, where that's in the 3rd house, related to your daily habits, your daily routines. There could be a change with a sibling or an extended family member where they're maybe going through the death of an old dream and they're having to come to terms with something in reality. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, Saturn's the ruler of your ascendant, and Saturn tends to make our dreams feel further away or make us work hard to manifest them in reality. So keep that in mind, that Saturn's just came together with Mars and is coming together with Mars in the 3rd house. Could be an ending of some sort in regards to a neighbor, an extended family member, or etc. And that could be the impetus towards the changes that you're making within your family, that also could fan out into, work that you have to do and your belief system. Okay, let's keep going. Painted Turtle says, as a Scorpio child, they especially like to test their siblings. I found a cool card deck that has photos of people expressing emotions with descriptions for discovery that help them not push buttons. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, pushing emotional buttons, right? Dawn says, thank you. If I can get relief from this autoimmune, I will be eternally grateful. Oh, I'm wishing you relief, Dawn. Yeah, and there might be some changes. I believe you're Sag rising, Dawn. So that might be something where you're finally getting the information that you need. Jennifer says, very interesting. Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Paintings by Mare says, I'm Sag rising. I just had a health issue that was scary at first, but ultimately provided relief. So much of my experience is reflected in the chart. I love astrology. Me too, Mare. I agree. And it's nice when we can get confirmation for the things that we're feeling and that we're living. And it just helps us understand what might be necessary. And the real value of all of it is understanding if there's a challenging thing happening, that it has an expiration date, right? That it's not going to be forever. Just like it helps us appreciate the good things that say, hey, appreciate this good time because it might not be like this forever. So it goes both ways. All right, Cap Rising, I hope that was helpful for you. 4th house issues, a new realization about your family, reviewing something with a family member or a home. And it's a lot of the impetus coming from your daily routines, from your own inner intuition, and through extended family members, siblings, etc. Okay, let's go Aquarius rising. Let's do this. Let's do it. We're going to do this. We're on track here, friends. I'm going to eat my dinner on time today, says the Taurus part of me. So, Aquarius rising, you have a 3rd house Mercury kazimi. It is Mercury's providing resources for your 5th house of Gemini and your 8th house of Virgo. So there might be realizations in regards to extended family members, siblings, your own daily habits and routines, and that could be shifting your insights from one of following an orthodox system, like an orthodox religious system or belief system, to starting to trust your own intuition and trust your gut. Okay, this is a big shift for you Aquarius risings in that regard, especially with the new moon solar eclipse there as well. So these insights that you might be receiving could have an effect on how you seek pleasure in your life. It could be related to your children, with the fifth house being provided for, and with how you share resources with other people, either how you're supported through other people's resources or how you support other people. Now, the Mars Saturn conjunction is happening in your second house. So there's probably been some hurdles to overcome financially. Maybe it's through having to support yourself through some changes that have been going on in your life and in your family. And you're having to kind of step up and say, well, what do I do now? This source of support is gone, or this limiting factor is gone. So what do I do now? And you may have to get realistic about what it is that you do to support yourself, especially with Saturn as the ruler of your ascendant hanging out around that fixed star. Like, I didn't mention this, but there's a fixed star there called a Churnar. One thing to keep in mind is that fixed star is related to that story of Phaethon, who was the over-eager son of Helios, the sun god, who tried to drive the chariot of the sun and ended up drowning in the river Eurydanus after he got shot out of the sky by Zeus with a lightning bolt. So one of the associations with the Churnar, 15 degrees of Pisces, is fires and floods. So be careful of that, friends. Like fires and floods. Wherever Mars and Saturn are hanging out with those 2 degrees coming together. So make sure you have good disaster insurance or whatever it is. But again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical disaster. There could be something where just something happened that was through no fault of your own, and now you're having to move under your own power to work forward with that. All right, let's keep going. We're going to make Pisces rising. We're going to make it after all. We're going to eat our dinner on time. Sorry. Sorry, friends. I'm silly. I'm a ridiculous astrologer person. Try to keep it light here. So Pisces rising. We have finally come to the final rising sign here. You have a Mercury retrograde cycle going on in your second house. This could be a budget review, Pisces rising. This could be saying, how do I, similar to the Aquarius rising, where there's a lot of action in that second house, but it's a little bit more difficult. You may be saying, okay, what do I need to do to encourage people to give me money, potentially? And it could be because you're going through some stuff with Saturn and Mars coming together in your first house. There's times when Pisces risings do overestimate their ability. They are dreamers. Doesn't mean that they're bad folks. It just means that sometimes they aren't realistic about what is or isn't possible. And Mars and Saturn are giving you some pretty intense reality checks, friends. Again, this isn't taking a dump on Pisces rising. The positive parts of that rising sign is the compassion that you're able to have for people, and the vision to be able to bridge the gap between folks. But there may be some challenges that you're having, especially with your body, like not trying to push yourself beyond your limitations. That could be what Saturn and Mars coming together is teaching you, is that, Jupiter is expansive. And oftentimes Pisces rising and Sagittarius rising push themselves beyond their own limits. Sometimes Sagittarius does it physically, sometimes Pisces does it emotionally. And as we all know, when we push ourselves to our limits emotionally, that can have physical repercussions. So be very careful of that, Pisces rising. Don't give beyond what is comfortable for your body. There could be themes that you are getting realizations around your family, around your parents, around your relationships, because Mercury is providing resources for both Gemini and Virgo on the 4th and 7th house cusps, respectively. Finally, Pisces rising, your ruling planet, Jupiter, is coming together with Uranus shortly after this kazimi cycle. So you are going to probably be having an important remedying situation with a sibling, with a neighbor, with an extended family member, with trusting your own intuition over following an orthodox teacher or system. The other thing I've noticed with Pisces heavy people is they just want something or someone to surrender to, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a religion, whether it's a spiritual system. And that can get them into very compromising situations. So I think that part of this process, Pisces rising, is learning to trust yourself and trust your gut. That's the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction coming together in the third house, is trusting the wisdom that arises from within without having to externalize it into some other power besides yourself. Okay? All right, friends, we've gotten through the rising signs. Dawn says, oh, thank you so much, Dawn, for the super sticker. Appreciate you, friend. Steven says, someone is hungry. Yes, absolutely. I'm getting hungry. But thanks again, Dawn, for the super sticker. Appreciate you showing up and contributing spiritually, materially, intellectually, and physically. And just wishing you the best down there in Mobile, Alabama. Let's see. Yeah, Steven. I'm hungry, but if I don't wrap it up, I'm going to get hangry. Like, there's a big stack up in Aries, friends. And you won't like me when I'm hangry. That's the Cancer, Sun, Taurus, Moon talking. Okay. We're on a roll here, friends. Let's wrap it up. So, we have an I-Ching reading for you here today and an animal to help us through this Mercury retrograde cycle. So the I-Ching that I have for you today is number 34. It's called Great Power. It sounds very much like that Spider-Man influence where we said, with great power comes great responsibility. And that is true. So I think that one of the things that the I-Ching is trying to encourage us towards is utilizing our power wisely, being able to move under our own power, potentially, but doing it in the way that is responsible, benevolent, that takes other people's needs into consideration and helps us to provide leadership in an ethical fashion. So other translations for this hexagram: great power, the power of the great, dominance, great strength, using your power wisely, uniting strength with justice. That's important, justice, okay? So here's an excerpt from Jack M. Balkin's book, The Law of Changes. It says, you have enormous power and influence on the situation now, but the secret to great power is knowing when and how to use it. And the moral responsibility of great power is to use it only for good purposes and not simply to attain selfish ends. Great power is truly great, not when it is vast or mighty, but when it is used in the pursuit of something good and just. Great power that is exercised selfishly degenerates into tyranny. Great power exercised thoughtlessly degenerates into chaos. If you find yourself in a position of strength and influence, let your conscience be your guide. Okay, so this is important. This is saying, hey, if you're feeling the impulse to move under your own power, to make a new start, to do some leadership type of things, to strike out on your own, make sure that you're staying true to your values. Make sure you're staying true to your ethics. I happen to be someone who is very much motivated to live an ethical life. There's times when I'm out of alignment with my ethics, just as everyone is. But I'm very much motivated by those ethics. And again, a lot of the back and forth I've been having with all of you about this, how to support the channel, is motivated by my ethics. So how can you, in your life, figure out what your core values are and let that be your guide to enabling personal sovereignty? Does that make sense? What can you live with? What is in alignment with your spirit, with your royal decrees? Remember, we talked earlier in the show about when Mercury stations direct. It stations direct in the decan associated with the sun. Okay, that says, here's who I am. This is what I believe. Here are my virtues. It's called the Lord of Virtue. So this is a really poignant I-Ching reading for this. Is if we're going to move under our own power, we have to do it in alignment with our values. Okay. Uranus Ascending says, tell it to the politicians. Yeah. Ugh. I don't want to go down that road, Uranus Ascending. Steven says, oh wait, Lel Faye says, thank you, Spencer. Good to connect again. Good to connect with you, Faye. I hope you're doing well, friend. Nice to see you in the chat. Steven says, Hulk smash. Yes, that's the That's when we get to the end of the show and our blood sugar's low. Jennifer says, my cousin, who is an Aquarius rising, just had her baby girl Monday, Leo ascendant, and she's 47. Oh my goodness, that is wild. So that fits with our Aquarius rising analysis, doesn't it, Jennifer? Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Another Rachel says, thank you, Spencer. I am an Aries rising, and I've been deconstructing and the self-effacing remnants left in my psyche from my fundamentalist childhood. On point, Mercury retrograde in the first, and Mars Saturn in the 12th. Ooh, Rachel. Quite an opportunity to reinvent yourself, isn't it? So I wish you luck with that, friend, and thank you so much for making yourself visible in the chat today. We have a lot of Rachels in the chat, so I love all my Rachels. So I wish you luck with that. And one step at a time, unraveling old belief systems is a lot to unpack. And when we have been, I would say, victims of spiritual abuse, where religion was used not for enlightenment and empowerment, but for control, it takes a while to unpack that and unravel those knots. So one day at a time, and we'll get through it. Prudence says, thank you for your time. Thank you, Prudence. Hope you're doing well, Prudence. Good to see you here. We have one more thing, friends, and then we're going to end for the day. We're at about 4:30. We're going to end almost right on time here. The animal I have for you is the camel. So I picked these randomly. I love that the camel came up for us. The camel is an animal that is a survivor. And if I know anything about my Aries folks and Aries as a symbol, they are survivors. So I think that the camel is well suited for harsh terrain. Remember, we also spoke about the third decan of Aries being about winning over a hostile crowd. And we're in a difficult situation, and we have to use our charisma, and we have to use our ability to woo people. Okay? Now, I don't know how a camel would woo you. Maybe spitting at you, potentially, or something like that. But there's good lessons in that. Like, camels, we got to be careful that we're not spitting at the people that we want to to get on board and carry us across the desert. Okay. The other thing about camel that I think is really interesting is they are super, super adapted to those harsh terrains. They have very thick pads on the bottom of their feet so that their feet don't burn on the hot sand. They have tongues and mouths that are well suited to eating things that normal animals couldn't eat. They carry a lot of their own moisture within them. That's another thing to be able to carry your own power. So here's an example. I'll read you an excerpt from this book. It's called Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez, and this is where I choose my animals from. It says, when camel appears, it means to look within yourself for empowerment and clarity instead of seeking it from other people. You have everything you need to survive. Now is the time for you to be self-reliant and to stand on your own. You are your own inspiration, cheerleader, and teacher. You carry your own burdens instead of sharing them with others. Camel means not to waste your energy on things that aren't completely necessary to your survival. Camel stores fat in its humps and uses it when it is without food or water. It could mean that you're giving away too much of your time and energy to others instead of keeping it in reserve, or you're burning it up way too fast. Now is the time to step back and let others rely on themselves and to slow down your fast pace. Build up your reserves. You may need them sooner than you think. I mean, that's really feels very spot on. We have a huge solar eclipse that is encouraging us through circumstance to step out on our own and to trust ourselves and to get our own needs met. And a lot of the wisdom that we have that we normally would look outside of ourselves for, we have it within us. We already know what we need to do. So trust your intuition, trust your gut, be adaptable, practice resilience during this period of time, because eclipses, they bring us some situations, friends. They bring us some narrative chapter marker changes. And sometimes the things that we don't like are change. And I will also suggest that what looks like a negative change at first can sometimes be the impetus for a really important change that you might never have made had you not felt the friction of the event that something like a faded eclipse might bring you. So hang in there, friends. You can do it. Be your own camel and we'll get across this desert together. I'm just going to check in with this chat one more time. Uranus ascending. Dimfy says, thank you, Spencer. Camel emoji. Jennifer says, great work. Thank you, friend. Uranus ascending says, I rode a camel once at an amusement park many years ago. I think I also have ridden a camel at some sort of nature park. Let's see. Big Steph says, the camel carries its own water of spirit even when it's cast into the wilderness. Yes, I love that. I love that. Very fitting. Okay. Devin says, the camel reminds us to stay steady in our efforts during this Mercury retrograde. Don't be forced to double back because we went too fast the first time. Absolutely. Slow down. Take it easy. You know, everything that you need for this retrograde is within you. Remember we talked about Hermes visiting the underworld, and when it goes retrograde, we're actually revisiting our past to unearth and uncover and shine a spotlight, the sun, on our own resources. So perfect. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Appreciate all of you. Do me a huge favor. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. Please visit me over at spencermichaud.com if you'd like to book a reading, if you need more personal advice. Go follow me at Spencer Michaud on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. If you want to buy me a coffee after the fact, you can do that if you enjoy the work I do here today. Yeah, just appreciate all of you. Be kind to yourself around this period of time, please. And despite all of the Aries influences, be kind to others as well. There will be times where you are going to tell people to F off, but choose those times very wisely and recognize that everyone else is going through stress as well, and have compassion for them. And you really will catch more flies with honey. That's what Aries 3 is teaching us. Use those social graces. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you. Have a good one. Have a great eclipse. Be safe if you're going to go look at it. I wouldn't suggest looking at it, but good luck with it. And we'll see you the next time. We'll see you on the other side. Take care, friends. Peace.